Comrade Bonga.
Yes, leadership.
So.
Yeah, okay, I'm making you admin, sir.
Okay.
After success in our post stands out. It seems so the leadership level,
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening, Nopala.
You acknowledge. Yeah, you're on. Anything else?
Good evening, comrades. It's 7:01 now. I hope you are all good.
We are all good,
Yes,
comrade.
we are all good.
Yes, welcome. My name is Stanley Mangena, the facilitator of this session from King Abela Matlangu, Ward 5, in the Tshwane region, inner city northwest zone of the African National Congress. Therefore, perhaps it's very important that we start also just to indicate that the co-hosts will also assist me in making sure that those who are in the waiting room are accepted as we proceed. I can see the numbers are coming through. Yeah, so that they can join this great session, political education in the African National Congress in this ward. But we know that it's not limited to this ward. It also impacts on other areas in the country. So now we have a speaker with us on the platform. And equally, I will therefore request, before I go far, to just request the secretary of the branch, Comrade Taylor, to take this opportunity and equally welcome everybody officially. Comrade Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this opportunity to welcome everyone. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to join us in this political education. Thank you for taking your time. A special welcome to Comrade Welile, who will educate us today about this heated topic that is shaking South Africa, where everyone is making speculation. Hey, the president is selling the country to Elon Musk, to Donald Trump. So today we're having the opportunity. We thank you, Comrade Welile, because you have first experience. You know America, you were once there. At least you know the atmosphere up there and you understand this topic. Thank you for coming to give us the inside knowledge of what's really going on. Thank you very much. Feel at home. Educate us. We are all ears. Thank you. Feel free. Thank you, Comrade. Back to you, Comrade Chair.
Thanks, Comrade Taylor, the secretary of the branch. Also, a special welcome to the speaker, Comrade Welile, from myself.
Thank you, Chair. Should I proceed?
Comrades, can we be muted? I'm still on the platform now. We really appreciate this moment. Therefore, I will not waste any more time. But perhaps maybe the ground rules. Comrades, as you enter the platform, please make sure you are muted. so that we minimize the interruptions of this as the speaker presents. Let's just keep that one in mind. But all the co-hosts, please also assist me in welcoming comrades who are on the waiting room. And equally, most importantly, those who comes in, they're not muted. Please assist me in that so that they remain muted, not to interrupt the session. It's important that we listen to the speaker, and the comrade will equally make notes so that we ask very provocative questions that will take the African National Congress forward within the context of the year of renewal, as Secretary of the ANC has correctly indicated. So now, but for now, before the speaker comes in, it's important that the speaker gets introduced properly. And I'll take this opportunity to give it to Comrade Cornelius, just to give us a brief intro of who is Comrade Welile Nhlapo. Over to you, Comrade Cornelius.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. I see our honorary member, Ambassador Thenjiwe Mtintso, is here, and she has worked for many years with Comrade Ambassador Welile Nhlapo. May I hijack you, Ambassador Mtintso, to do the honors of introducing Comrade Welile. Thank you.
Thank you. Comrade Thenjiwe, welcome. We appreciate you. You can proceed.
Okay, maybe let me just proceed.
I'm trying to unmute myself.
Oh, thank you.
Comrade Thenjiwe. Maybe.
Trying to unmute.
Yeah, now I can hear your leadership.
We can hear you, leadership.
He has muted himself again.
Comrade Thenjiwe, unmute yourself. Comrade Thenjiwe, unmute yourself.
Comrade Chair, may we not give Comrade Thenjiwe the vote of thanks so that Comrade Cornelius can introduce, because she's still having some problems with the muting and unmuting.
Okay, let's just give her 30 seconds or so, then Comrade Cornelius will proceed in a situation where there are challenges. Comrade Thenjiwe? Comrade Cornelius, perhaps you can proceed. Maybe we're not succeeding in getting her to speak.
But can someone mute remotely, the organizers?
Pardon?
Comrade Cornelius, are you not able to unmute her remotely?
How is that done? Let me see if I am able to do so.
Yeah. Let's give you this 30 seconds to unmute her.
Yeah. So I'm struggling to see her on the platform now.
Or maybe let's just
Chair, can Comrade
Let's
Cornelius
proceed.
continue?
Yeah, no, maybe let's proceed, Comrade Cornelius.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Hello.
And good evening, comrades.
Yes.
Welcome, Comrade Ambassador. Comrade Ambassador Welile Nhlapo is a veteran of the African National Congress, a diplomat of note. From 2011 to 2012, Ambassador Nhlapo served as South Africa's special representative to the Great Lakes region. He has extensive experience of working in the Great Lakes region, having also headed the country's Burundi technical team. South Africa was mediator in the Burundi peace process, as we all know. From 2010 to 2011, Ambassador Nhlapo served as the National Security Advisor to the President. After going into exile in Botswana in 1974, Comrade Ambassador served as the ANC Chief Representative in Botswana. In 1982, he was given the responsibility of heading the ANC Youth League in South Africa. He joined the then Department of Foreign Affairs in 1994. In 1995, he was appointed South African Ambassador to Ethiopia and the permanent representative to the Organization of African Unity and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. In 1998, Comrade Ambassador was appointed Deputy Director General responsible for Africa in the then Department of Foreign Affairs. In 2001, he was appointed head of the Presidential Support Unit, which advised the presidency on conflict resolution in Africa and the Middle East. Ambassador Nhlapo served as South Africa's ambassador to the African Union Mission in Burundi and as ambassador to the United States of America from 2007 to 2009. Ambassador Nhlapo was also director in the Department of Political Affairs at the United Nations headquarters in New York. He also served as chairperson of the board of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund in the United States of America. Chairperson, comrades, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Cornelius, for that short. I know that you have made it very short, this introduction. We can say a lot, but perhaps maybe, comrades, just to jog your mind, as you know correctly, you have this information at your disposal. So, the topic today, South Africa-US relations in the Trump era, constraints and possibility. Those are the areas that we'll be looking at. And therefore, without any waste of time, it's now 7:14. I'll give it to Comrade Welile Nhlapo to proceed with the presentation. Welcome, leader. The platform is yours. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, comrades, and thank you for the invitation and the introduction. And thanks to Comrade Tenji for volunteering that I should make myself available today for the purpose of this important engagement or discussion, which I hope will be able to exchange views and arrive at a common understanding of why it is important today that we find ourselves having to talk about the South Africa-United States relations under the Trump administration. I think indeed it is proper to look at the current challenges that are posed by the re-election of Donald Trump for a second term into the presidency of the United States. and what has happened since then. But let me start by saying that what Donald Trump has done has got some new elements which define his character as the person who's occupying that office. The issues that he is engaging are not new. It's his style of engagement and approach that has created a lot of problems, not only for the American people, but for all those countries that have had a particular relationship with the United States. And of course, the regions of the world that have had a defined relationship with the United States in terms of trade, diplomatic relations, security, and development. And there's a whole range of other issues in which the United States has been engaging the rest of the world. It has always been their ambition, and it continues to be, that the United States must remain the dominant power in the world. The United States have used its resources militarily, politically, economically, and diplomatically to position itself to be the hegemon and the superpower that had been recognized for some time. A lot of resources have been committed by the United States to position itself and sustain and maintain that position of dominance. It was instrumental in the process of repositioning itself in creating institutions that will mirror its own objectives and into which a lot of resources were also put in, particularly after the First and Second World War. The multilateral institutions that emerged during this period were spearheaded, sustained, and dominated by the United Nations, by the United States, or be it the military alliances that we have seen emerging, particularly during the Cold War, the institutions of global governance that emerged, including the financial and trade regimes that emerged after particularly the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989. What we're seeing today is a United States that is faced with a lot of serious challenges. Economic decline, the loss of the power and influence of the dollar incrementally. The dollar is now being challenged through a process of dollarization. No more that instruments that the United States can wield with ease to push its way around and have decisions that suit its purposes, because everybody will be using their currency to transact. sanctions were imposed against a number of countries that did not see eye to eye with the United States, particularly because of that advantage that it created for itself. But what we are seeing today is a situation where all that power and influence is beginning to decline. And as it is declining, it has become important for the current administration in particular to find ways and means of ensuring that America puts its interest to its survival. Hence, to make America great again, or America first, as Trump has coined his movement. The reorientation of the United States in this fast-changing global arrangements and situation informs the decisions that it is taking to reprioritize its domestic programs and priorities, and to make sure that whatever resources that the United States have scattered all over are now being used for the sake of making sure that the United States can survive. They have serious debt issues. They are the most indebted country currently. They sought to take advantage of countries that they've had a relationship with to produce goods and services, exploiting a cheap labor and the expertise that exists in those countries in order to ensure that American needs are met. Hence, they shifted all their production, particularly to the neighboring countries. NAFTA became the primary focus for that, with Mexico and Canada becoming the manufacturing sites for goods that are destined to the United States. In the same way, a lot of R&D, or what they have designed at the Silicon Valley, those goods were being produced primarily in China initially. Your cell phones, your computers, all the electronic gadgets that were designed and branded in the Silicon Valley as American products were being produced and marketed primarily from China. And then, of course, later shifted to Vietnam and then India recently. Some of the vehicles that the Americans have been producing, very little was happening in terms of manufacturing within the United States itself. So all the manufacturing of American vehicles were taking place outside because of offshore investments. And that started becoming a serious problem in terms of creating employment within the United States and gave rise to xenophobic tendencies because immigrants became a primary target. Because at a particular point, Americans were not to be found in particular jobs, and they will boastfully say that those are jobs that are reserved for Latinos, who were in the main undocumented immigrants. And therefore, the new batch of immigrants that we saw in the United States, which boasts itself to be a country of immigrants, which is what it is, because the owners of the land are wasting away in the plantations where they've been driven into, where they are disappearing into and not part of the mainstream American society, almost completely being vanquished. This is the America that is trying to recover and find itself. It is therefore not surprising that during his first election campaign, one of the things that Trump emphasized upon, which gave him an advantage and led him into the Oval Office as the President of the United States, he played the same card of immigrants and racism. One of his popular lines was that Americans, by Americans, he meant Caucasians, must be very careful because they will fast and are fast becoming an minority. And that Latinos and African Americans, to use his words, are breeding like rats and will become the majority and dominate them. That's the ticket that he used to get into the White House. But this time, for the second campaign, the very same posture was adopted, but with lesser crudeness, as it was the case before. But he took advantage of the demography of the United States in unleashing his campaign to make sure that his messages are tailored to every region, to every state, given its composition in terms of demography. And that's how his messaging was managed. And this is why even in the swing states and some of the states that the Democrats were dominating, they lost ground. Now, Trump came in as an outsider from the beginning, during his first term, and now in his second term. He is not a typical Republican candidate. Indeed, he is a right-wing whose ideas are closely associated with different factions within the Republican establishment. And he used his own resources from the very beginning to get himself into the campaign and ultimately became the candidate after wiping out all of those who contested with him in the primaries to become the candidate with the Republican ticket. And I'm saying this deliberately, a candidate with a Republican ticket. not controlled by the Republican establishment, and not being driven by their own policies, but piggybacking on some of them in order to build a base for himself, and they themselves benefited from the arrangements that he has made. The Hudson Institution, or Hudson Institute, a right-wing think tank that was established in 1973 to promote Reagan. Reagan, who was himself an outsider. He came from Hollywood. He was an accomplished actor. And he was given the script that suited his character, and he was able to execute that script meticulously because of his profession. And that's how the Republicans managed to get somebody who would best articulate their policies, with the Hudson Institution or Institute being the one that provides the basis for policy development and expression. It was again the same Hudson Institute for the second term of Donald Trump that designed and spearheaded what is now known as Project 2025, which was a blueprint or the manifesto for the Trump administration, or for the MAGA movement, that propelled them into the Oval Office. And that is why from day one, if one looks at the orders that Trump has signed, and you look at what is contained in that Project 2025, what became the manifesto of the WAGA movement, is precisely in sequence and detail and timing in terms of time frames, precisely what was framed within the document. Is being executed to an extent that even those who had designed that document, who were the authors, some of whom are part of the administration today, are quite surprised at the speed and the details to which he has been able to come with those orders one by one, and making sure that he entrenches himself in power from day one. So it is not by accident. There is nothing that he has done by accident. Everything was by design. The people who finance his campaign, because that's another thing that you have to take into account when you deal with the US and how policy is developed and managed, is who is financing. This time, he did not rely mainly on his own finances, but he got finances particularly from people like Elon Musk and what is normally known as the Pal mafia, which is these three other South Africans who were active in the Silicon Valley. The people who are the ones who groomed, financed, and placed J.D. Vance as his deputy, because they gave him employment. So it's also not by accident that they had J.D. Vance as his deputy. It was planned by those who are financing, who financed that campaign, because it is allowed in the United States for people to make the amount of contributions financially that we've seen. And therefore they expect some returns for it. And we've seen some of the things that are happening now and their influence in this whole policy formulation and implementation in the United States. So some of the issues that Trump has picked on are issues that if you trace back, you'll find that they existed. Even at the time of the Biden administration and other administration before, they've always been issues for Americans. And therefore, attempts have always been made of trying to find a way of dealing with them in order to begin to address their domestic situation. But because of their dominance and their footprint globally, everything they do or touch have got global implications and does affect the globe. During the time of Bush, the attack on multilateral institutions and primarily the United Nations was unfolding, but did not garner that much momentum to a point where they could have the kind of impact that we're seeing today. Trump picked up from that. And he had the very same Ambassador Bolton as his security advisor, who is a specialist in coming to making sure that the United States distances itself from whatever is happening within the United Nations, and that they should not be putting in their resources into an institution that they cannot have control over. And hence the assault on the United Nations on all the programs and processes that are associated with that body, be it on issues of trade, issues of development, or humanitarian assistance. The withdrawal of funding is not abrupt. It has been a well-structured, targeted approach as to which aspects of American financing is going to be withdrawn, at what point and how. It is only the details that became different. And once that has started happening, it had an adverse effect on all the countries and the global institutions in which the United States have had not only a relationship, but on whom they had built a dependency. Some of the programs that we've seen collapsing, PEPFAR being one of them, and others that are related, precisely an expression of this very same policy, options and approaches that they tended to deal with. But essentially what they were addressing were domestic issues and domestic imperatives. Bring back all these resources, use them for purposes of developing and bringing about stability to the United States. That was the primary objective. And the primary target and the primary victims of the Trump administration policies are broadly the people of the United States. They are the primary target. It can be argued in a way that the rest of us are just a collateral damage in this global arrangement because of the dominance and reliance on the United States and its resources to maintain this global order that is up to now being the arrangement on which the world is organized and interacts. So as South Africans, we have to locate our bilateral relations with the United States within that context. I will venture to say that the issue of Iran, our relationship with Iran is not new. At the time of Mandela, it was raised, and Mandela had to make very clear that we are not going to be pushed into severing whatever relationship that we have with Iran. Because Iran had a relationship with the apartheid regime, and they were supplying oil and petroleum to South Africa. And therefore, it was a dependency that was created during that period, but something that could be sustained with the new regime that came into power after the Shah. We were quite comfortable with that relationship. And we moved on with Iran on that basis. In the same way as we moved on with a lot of other countries, we inherited relationships economically and otherwise that existed with the countries of the West that have been supporting the apartheid regime. But we equally managed to continue with the relationship with the people of those countries who, during our struggle, continued to support us against the policies of their own governments, and in some cases succeeded in making sure that they change those policies. The disinvestment campaigns that took place in the United States were certainly geared towards not only supporting our struggle, but making sure that that relationship that existed, which benefited the apartheid regime in the many ways in which it did, economically, militarily, and financially, and politically, because they were bailing them out because they had defined them as a strategic ally and a bulwark against communism in this tip of the continent. So there has been that relationship. But we have been able to develop this dual relationship to our benefit to some extent, because we continue to have the relationship with the people of the United States, with the civil rights movement, with those who were in the United States Senate and Congress, particularly the Black Congressional Caucus, who always stood by us and supported our struggle and made sure that the policies that are being adopted by the United States administration are opposed. So we maintained that relationship. We maintained that relationship with a lot of other structures and organizations in the United States who supported us. But we had to enter into a structured relationship with the United States, particularly after our democratic breakthrough. They made themselves available to us to support us in whatever way that they thought it was necessary, particularly at the time of the Clinton administration. They did a lot to support not only our transformation in some areas where they came in and established this bi-national commission, which was chaired by both Deputy President Mbeki and the Deputy President of the United States, Al Gore, what was known as the Mbeki-Gore Commission, with subcommittees under it, well-defined, designed to ensure a structured relationship between ourselves and the United States of America. in areas of common interest that have been identified. There was a security area that was identified. In fact, the longest surviving of those subcommittees has been the Military to Military Commission. It still survives it now, except that the withdrawal of some of the support that was given for training to our people has had an adverse effect on our military to military relationships. And of course, the joint exercises that suffered at the time when we opted to go into a joint military exercise with Russia and China at the time when the United States was expecting the next round of such exercise. Now, this exercises and that relationship has always been managed under AFRICOM, but within the Department of Defense, not Stuttgart, which is the operational area, but Department of Defense that fostered military to military relations, exchange of visits and everything that has been taking place within that context, including training, that continued until recently when Trump came in and withdrew some of the financing of the programs, and we had to withdraw some of our people who were already in their military academies. So that's one that suffered. On trade, when AGOA was put in place and the United States decided that they are going to extend tariff-free arrangements for access of goods from a specified number of African countries, which they determined who they will be and the criterion that was developed by them and the conditions for the trade with them. So it's not the whole of Africa that benefited. And AGOA was not a bilateral and is not a bilateral arrangement. There are certain products that they wanted from the continent and ensured that they have a particular advantage in accessing those products and allowing for them to go tariff-free or to come in tariff-free into the United States. And this was meant for African countries that were in the category of the least developed countries. Naturally, we should not and could not have be one of those countries that could have been considered. But precisely because of the nature of the resources that we commanded and the trade that already existed between the United States and South Africa for goods and services, for all sorts of things that they needed for their own industries, for their auto industry, for their aerospace industry, and a number of other industries. We saw most of the companies from South Africa beginning to invest even considerably in the United States. I can mention Sasol amongst others. Huge investments that they've made in the US, and including the partnership they've had with Boeing in producing a special kind of fuel that will enable them to fly whatever aircraft that they have, particularly for military purposes. They use the advantage of the technology that Sasol had to develop that capacity. There are a number of other strategic areas where they relied on South African minerals in order to satisfy their own needs in terms of industry and security. Some of the cars that they needed, particularly BMW's 3 Series, came out of the plants here in Roslyn and Port Elizabeth. Those were the cars that were running in the United States. BMW 3 Series, it came from here. So there was a lot of trade also from the auto industry, but it was two ways, because the old industries or investments that they have continue. And that's why you have the assembly plants and some of the cars that are still being marketed from the United States here in South Africa, and a number of other goods and services. Our wines and fruits, they found a special place within the United States and continue to do so. Very competitive. And there are also other goods that have also found their way into the United States. So we are trading with the United States in a very diversified way, to a point where we actually have enjoy a trade deficit against the United States. And that is a reality. These are the issues that they have been talking about even at the bilateral level. When I went to the United States to take over my post as ambassador in 2007, these are some of the issues that were raised, which Ambassador Masigela and Ambassador Sheila Sisulu were dealing with before I arrived in the United States, because even by then, there was a consideration of making new arrangements for us to trade with the United States, particularly after the trade arrangements we made with the EU. They thought that we could enter into the same kind of trade relations with them. And so was the case with PEPFAR, until such time that we're able ourselves to develop that very broad program of dealing with HIV and AIDS treatment. And when we entered into an arrangement with them, that certain aspects of the support that we've been getting from them can be shifted somewhere else, because we can be able to finance that from our fiscus. That's where part of the problem started, and they were then beginning to say, maybe we might also look at PEPFAR, amongst other things, as to whether it will continue to be sustainable for the United Nations to support us wherever same needs without any domestic capacity to finance those programs in developing countries exist. So that was a discussion, that was a debate. It has been ongoing. It's nothing new. What is new is the accelerated way in which this thing is taking place. What is part of the reason? The senators that started raising the issue of the relationship between South Africa and the United States and implored the Trump administration to begin to reflect on that relationship and change it. Those 4 senators, interestingly, all of them, their campaigns were funded by the pro-Israeli institution called IPAC. It's a lobby group that specializes on ensuring that Congress, the lobby Congress, to pass regulations and laws that are in favor of Israel, to promote and protect Israel. It is therefore not by accident that these four, in particular during this period, accelerated a process that is started under the Biden administration during the wake of Mr. Botai's allegations that Lady R was loading arms destined for Russia. That's when they started talking about investigating these relationships. But this is a pro-Israeli lobby. When we took Israel to The Hague, their activities within Congress targeting South Africa went on steroid. Because that's precisely the reason why they exist. And all the other senators from across the aisle, as they would say, on both sides of the aisle, were being mobilized because all of them were beneficiaries of the same Israeli lobby funding for their campaigns, and that's why they are in Congress. And it's perfectly legitimate for that to happen. Now, in the United States, when you talk about what you call the US or the Washington establishment, we are talking about think tanks, lobby firms of lawyers, a whole array of universities and different kinds of formations whose primary task is to drive policy in many directions within the United States. They are advocacy groups who are being funded by some of the wealthiest foundations that exist in the United States, which are aligned to either the right, the center, and a few of them to the left, this political spectrum in the United States. And they target particularly the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Most of the people who are in government today or who were in government before resign into these institutions and drive the policies from there. It is a continuation of what they were doing when they were in government and what they do as research institutions or NGOs or think tanks or whatever a name or establishment they might be trading around, particularly the legal firms, which are lobbyist firms who have a direct relationship with Congress and target specific individuals. So if you understand that this is how things are, this is how the United States work, and that all of those activities are perfectly legal, the challenge that you have and what most embassies then do, some of them, they enlist these very institutions in their variety to lobby on their behalf, paying a lot of money, even some of the poor ones, because to have influence into Congress becomes very difficult. We've been fortunate that we had not gone that route. I'm not sure now that we had not gone that route because we had allies in Congress with whom were politically and historically tied together. And that was particularly the Black Congressional Caucus. They became and continued to be a reliable and dependable ally of our struggle, because most of the people who found themselves in Congress were part of the civil rights movement. So there's always saw a connection between their own struggles and ours. So there was a common bond that existed across the board. But most of them are passing on. One of them just passed on last week, or at the beginning of this week, Charlie Rangel, the man who sponsored the legislation that undermined the Reagan's administration relationship with the apartheid regime and brought to an end the support that the apartheid regime enjoyed with the United States and opened the way for sanctions to be imposed, although too late and in a limited way. But for this investment to escalate, this is just one example. That breed of leadership within Congress is disappearing because of age. But there are new ones who are coming up, whose focus are somewhere different, but work can still be done to make sure that those relationships are sustained, because even the domestic issues have changed and the challenges themselves have changed. And the Democratic Party, which was the basis, has become weak in terms of sustaining itself and taking into better heights the interests of the American constituencies that they're supposed to be serving. This is the position, and this is the situation that we are confronted with. All I'm trying to say is that those people are still there. They still have a relationship with the South African embassy on that basis. They have an interest in everything that is happening in this country. Some of them have the honor of having the order of Oliver Tambo, companions of Oliver Tambo, and they're very proud about it. Every time when is our National Day, you see them with those orders, with pride. So you still have, except that they are also becoming less and less, because unfortunately age has caught up with them. They are resigning from Congress. Some have passed on, a number of them have passed on. But we do have, and those who are still there have the influence. So we still have people who can reach out to. The issue that we need to do is to make sure that in whatever we do in that country, like in any other country, but in the United States in particular, we make sure that we've got a very strong embassy, because for the last 10, 15 years, that has been the opposite, the shadow of his past. Painful reality to accept that this is the situation in which we are. And that's why our relationship with the United States weakened in the process. For some time, too much time without a full complement within the embassy, and some of the other components of the South African government not being appropriately or fully represented in the embassy. The question of budget cuts also have had an impact. But the partnership that always existed between the embassy, Brand SA, South African Airways, in particular, that partnership has been able to sustain the maintenance of our public engagement with the United States. And we saw that in particular coming into play during the time of the preparation for the World Cup, where everybody came on board because we're able to mobilize the South African institutional capacity that we had on the ground and the relationships that they had with different structures of the American population, and particularly even also within business, because there's a very well organized Chamber of Commerce that also comes on board. And there's also the diaspora, South African diaspora, some of whom have been a major boost and contributor towards the relationship between South African embassy and the work that it was doing in the United States. So I'm saying the potential is there and we can still be able to build on that to make sure that we can take some of these processes forward. I am happy that the delegation went. I'm not going to pronounce myself on whether they did well or not, better organized, or any other thing. I've got my own observations, which I think I can leave to myself. And some of the observations that I've received from people that I've worked with, I don't think this will be the appropriate platform to go into that one. But all I am saying is that what we call a reset of our relationships must take into consideration all of these factors that I've tried to navigate and indicate what exactly is happening in this political, economic, security, and other spheres of our relations with the United States, and how this also relate to other issues that have strained our relationships, which has not been the first time. We have had a difficult problem with the United States when we were in the Security Council. People still make references to that. And I'm also going to come back for it briefly. Question of Zimbabwe. We differed fundamentally with the United States on the issue of Zimbabwe because they wanted to bring it to the Security Council. And that's not where it belonged, because there were processes of engagements that were taking place through the regional initiative where South Africa was central in bringing about negotiations amongst the Zimbabweans. And there was an arrangement that was made with both the Bush and in the UK, I'll remember Blair, that they will not interfere in the issues of Zimbabwe and they will give us a chance to be able to deal with those processes without their interference. And they stayed the course until Blair was leaving office. He started to renege. Unfortunately, Bush did the same thing at the last moment. We had to take that position within the Security Council. We took another position on Myanmar in supporting the Secretary General in engaging the junta in that country because they wanted to stop him from doing so. And the Africa group had taken a decision that the Secretary General and his special envoy, Ambassador Gambari from Nigeria, must be supported and protected from the onslaught of the others in the Security Council who did not want this initiative to take place. But once it gained momentum, they were the first to run there and wanted to own the positive outcome after Ambassador Gambari has been able to access and sanction Chi. He had worked with military governments in Nigeria before. He knew how to deal with them and engage them. That was the measure of his success. In the same way, in Syria, he was able to make some limited breakthrough until his withdrawal. These are the positions that we're supporting. And we're also having a problem with the United States about their withdrawal from the Human Rights Commission at the time. But because we're the only country that had a relationship, 3 countries that were discussing human rights regularly. At one point, George Nene came, who was responsible for our multilateral institutions, and particularly the UN, to discuss specifically the issue of our involvement in the Human Rights Commission. And they wanted to hear from us what we think needs to be done. They were interested, although they were from outside. That is the time of the Obama administration. But we were able to convince them that the best way of doing it, if they agree with us, that now that that thing was transformed to a Human Rights Council, there are better possibilities of improving its functioning. They came back. They went back to the Human Rights Council. That was part of the negotiation and the engagement that we have with them, because there were structured engagements on specific issues that we were able to identify where there was a potential to see eye to eye. When it came to the issue of removing Mandela and the ANC from the terrorist list, when President Bush decided that before he leaves office, he will want to honor Mandela, the question arose as to how do you honor a terrorist? Somebody who is in the list of terrorists of the United Nations, of the United States. A decision was then taken to start a process at looking at ways and means of arriving at that conclusion. Ambassador Masekela was still there. He started the engagements with them. By the time I came to the United States, it was towards the end of that process of engagements. And we took it up from there and engaged with the Congress, because it was a matter for Congress. Ultimately, Senator Kennedy, who was an obstacle to this issue, who wanted the IRA and the SPLM to be part of the package, with the government resisting, the administration resisting. They said, no, this is about Mandela. But also with an understanding that Mandela, not as an individual, that he was part of a collective, and that they'll have to do it in such a way that it also addresses the position of the ANC. One thing, and why the Bush administration was behaving in the manner in which it did, when Bush was campaigning to be president, the only sitting president who visited him was the president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, with the encouragement of Al Gore and Obama. Al Gore, who was the candidate for the Democratic Party, and say, reach out to that man. And he went to see him in his ranch. That was the first and the only president, sitting president, who went to visit him. And all the time, people in that administration that I dealt with, they would always remind me that Bush, if there's one thing about him, he can be very loyal and grateful to people who treated him differently from the rest, particularly at the time when he was being dismissed as a possible candidate to become president. So I'm mentioning these things, that what we do and say and how we do it and how we approach it becomes very important, because that is the relationship that you are able to build anyway. That's diplomatic practice. That has been the success of our diplomacy, to engage, even on very difficult issues. When the issue arose of Iraq, the way Mandela came out guns blazing against Bush, there was not even a singing response from him, because his father prevailed and said to him, don't respond. because Mandela had also cultivated a relationship with the father. If he wanted to get through to him, he'll do it through the father. And those who were in Stellenbosch will remember that President Mandela, he was out of office then, reported on this matter because it happened just shortly after it left office. When he attended the ANC conference, he explained how he dealt with the issue of Iraq and why he decided to say the things he was saying, because he was trying to reach out and giving the impression that the number he was using will get him through to a very attentive president who wanted to deal with the situation differently. So I'm saying that the relationships get built and sustained, and it becomes deliberate. As to whether you can be able to build such a relationship with a Donald Trump, I am not sure. What he did at the White House, at the Oval Office, is consistent with his behavior. During his campaign, every time he appeared on any platform, either in a debate directly with Kamala Harris or in his speeches wherever he went, all on many claims that he had made, on fact check, they were found to be false. So him and the truth don't seem to be good friends. I think I'll end up there. So it's very difficult to deal with a person who has that kind of character. Maybe let me stop here for now. And then I see there are a number of issues that people are raising, which are contemporary issues and which for me are just sideshows, but issues that are equally important to deal with because they do occupy a good amount of space that defines our relationship with the United States and moves our attention from the real issues that we're supposed to be dealing with in order to foster our relationship with that country, as we do with all other countries that we have a relationship with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Nhlapo. We really appreciate that, Comrade Ambassador, former ambassador. So, and I think that it was very clear in terms of providing the clarity on the question that is before us. So for now, I will then, as a part of the processes that we deal with, I'll then welcome the hands that perhaps wants to ask clarity-seeking questions and also making comments. All that I'm asking is that let's share the time so that we don't go beyond an individual comrade who want to speak, don't go beyond 3 minutes. But obviously, if it's a question, I know comrades might want to give background here and there, but make sure that you do so within that specific time. Now, at this point in time, comrades, I'll then, perhaps maybe before I take hands, Comrade Cornelius will also assist me, leader, in terms of the hands that perhaps I may not be able to see in this platform. And I can see that Comrade Tenjiwe Mtinso, she's back. Welcome. Comrade Abna Mosase, thank you, leader, for also grazing this engagement. I saw a number of comrades here. You are all welcome, who perhaps might have joined late. You are very important. I see a hand from Comrade Tumelo. That is the first hand that perhaps I'll then take. Tumelo Pito. Remain muted, comrades. Another hand is Tsepo. I see we only have 2 hands. Any other hand? Okay, maybe let me give these 2 hands at the moment to, I see Comrade Clayson, welcome leader. Any other hand, perhaps that I don't see? I see Dr. Sandile. Dr. Sandile, we have 4 hands comrades now. So I'll then request that the comrades can then begin to ask the second question and equally make comments. This is the first round. I see also Comrade Pito. Now we have 5 hands. Comrades, let's start. Comrade Tumelo, Pito, let's engage.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. And I want to welcome the presentation by the presenter. And it's a very interesting topic indeed. And I want to weigh in. I want to be the first on the queue for commentary. You know, something that really maybe many people who does not know, maybe who doesn't really follow United States politics, you know. I think we are in for a great partnership between South Africa and USA, considering the man who's steering the ship at USA. If we really know him, I mean, you would know that only good things that are going to come out of. Sorry, someone was disturbing me there. If you really know him, you would know that only good relations, good working relations that are going to come out of the that meeting with Donald Trump. And I want to say that you know, the relationship between South Africa and USA is going to be good because of some of the social ills that we have are going to be resolved through United States in terms of investment that are going to come to South Africa, which is going to create a lot of job opportunities for South Africans. I think this is the time that we have been waiting for, whereby the son of the soils are getting opportunities of job opportunities. And in terms of security and safety, I think we are in for another a big thing that is going to come out of that in terms of security. As we all know that if there is no social cohesion, there is bound to be social ills that are going to emerge out of a society that we live in. But rest assured that coming from that meeting of the Oval Office, I think things are going to be much better because of Donald Trump. I'm speaking just for a minute. I want to say that, you know, if you check the track record of Donald Trump, you'll find that this is a man's people. This is a man who in his first term, majority of the African American were having a lot of opportunities there, job opportunities. So I think now in his second term, there are still going to be things up his sleeve that is prepared for many people, you know, inclusive of everyone. So I think right now the relationship between us is going to be good based on the background that I've outlined, because you judge the book by its, you don't judge the book by its cover, but you judge it based on the history of that particular person. So I'm saying that since the background of Donald Trump, it says that he's looking to unite USA and to unite any country that wants to work with USA. So with those words, I want to submit my submission. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Dumelo. Comrade Tshepo. Comrade David Scoville, I've noted your name as well. You can drop the name.
Okay.
Now is Comrade Tshepo.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks very much for this insightful kind of engagement with Ambassador, our revered Ambassador. I'm a journalist, but I'm talking here as an ordinary South African. And what I want to pick, I think Clayson is here, and then from the Ambassador, Oguti, our engagement with the Ambassador talked about the Black Congressional Caucus. I think it has not happened, but what kind of means can we do in terms of engaging them? Because they've been there, like the Ambassador said, as our allies during apartheid eras. Or can't we leverage that kind of engagement with you? Like I was writing for Ambassador Andrew Young, I mean, he's one of the most still influential within the Republicans. And then what can we do to basically start and engaging them? And the other issue is the midterms. Trump is going to midterms next year. Are we playing the long game? Agua is gone, we know. He might come to Johannesburg in November. That's for said. But what is our end game? What is our plan in terms of, are we playing a long game? Tolerate until his support, which I think it might go down. But like Ambassador said, the Democrats are at the weakest place. They don't have a leader now after Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So those are 2 points. And to say, how do we leverage the last point, the G20 summit, as we are hosting, that we must have regular kind of these dialogues with our own people, because like the speaker before me talked about social cohesion. We're supposed to have it by end of this year, but there's no budget for that from what I heard from our Minister of Finance. We have to have that social cohesion so that we have to drown down that kind of a rhetoric that is coming from AfriForum and the other people who are decampaigning South Africa abroad. They have legitimate concerns. How do we address them going forward? Thank you, Kalebo.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Tshepo. Comrade Clayson.
Thank you very much, Leader. I first want to acknowledge the leadership that's in the meeting, and also
Comrade Clayson.
that we consult with regularly as current practitioners of IR. And I want to congratulate the leadership of our branch to have Ambassador Nhlapo and Ambassador Mtinto on the same platform is a rare privilege and honor. I wanted to make 2 quick points, Chair, and perhaps Tshepo has provoked me to respond to 1 or 2 things, and I'll be very quick. Just to confirm that there is a regular interactions and engagements with the Black Caucus on Capitol Hill. Comrades would recall that just before the elections, former Minister Naledi Pandor embarked on a visit to the US because there were already issues then, mostly triggered by South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ. You would recall there were several attempts to introduce bills that sought to get the administration to review relations with South Africa. On the back of that, we undertook that visit. I was part of the delegation, so I can confirm that there's regular interactions with the caucus. We recently, after the visit by President Ramaphosa to the White House, there were two congressmen who issued a statement in support of South Africa and pushing back against the lies that were being peddled and continue to be peddled, the information. So that's the first thing. The second thing to just say, in addition to what Ambassador Nhlapo was saying, that if you watch the interaction in the White House, which was televised, there's a lot of playing to the gallery, which is not unusual because it's all about ratings. And I'm sure you can trace what I'm saying here. The second part of that engagement, which was private, the lunch, you would have seen the piece by Minister Nchaveni, was cordial and friendly, lots of laughs, none of the drama that you saw on TV. So just to buttress the point that Ambassador Nhlapo made, that this is an important partnership and relationship. So as South Africa, we firmly believe in the principle that political differences are best resolved through dialogue. And that's why this continuing attempt to engage at various levels so that you don't allow what's currently happening to completely collapse this mutually beneficial relationship. So I just picked up my hand to just appreciate the very insightful input by Ambassador Nhlapo, but also just to clarify that there's ongoing engagements. Or lastly, in the second engagement after the televised parts, we were advised that if we could speak to South Africans, not to be the first ones to confirm that AGOA is gone. The team led by DTIC and ourselves, who are engaging with our counterparts on a trade deal with the US, are not so, what's the word, despondent about the idea that it's a foregone conclusion that AGOA is completely gone. That engagement continues because the reality is you can't trade with the SADC region if you're the United States of America at the exclusion of South Africa, because this region trades with the North, with the US through AGOA, utilizing South African infrastructure. I'm sure you're familiar with this. So it would be odd to trade with our neighbors and exclude South Africa when you're trading through South Africa utilizing its world-class infrastructure. So this idea that it's a foregone conclusion on AGOA, perhaps we shouldn't be amplifying that. Thank you, Chair.
Did you send your statement?
Thanks, Comrade Clayson, for that clarity that you have provided, leader. Perhaps maybe let's move to the next person, Dr. Sandile.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. And let me also join the previous speakers, comrades, really in welcoming the presentation by the Ambassador Nhlapo. Just a few comments and questions on my side. Basically, I think that the ambassador really raised a number of important points in his presentation. Amongst others, for instance, he indicated that it is actually the second attempt that, for instance, the USA is actually tampering or is seeking to undermine the multilateral institutions that it does not influence. Also linked to that was also the involvement of this Hastings Institute, which is a right-wing institute, and of course the Project 2025. Now, my question is, but of course linked to that was also the fact that from all of these, you can almost see the personal traits of the man, Trump. Now, the question for me is, to what extent, for instance, is this Project 25 driven, of course, by this right-wing element, including IPAC? For instance, having to do with issues such as the BRICS, for instance, and the relationship that South Africa has, for instance. Because when, for instance, I look at how Trump dealt with the issue of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, as it were, it is almost as if Trump is undermining, the status of NATO itself and Europe. So that's where, for instance, my question is. But also the other one relates to the fact that whilst Trump would, for instance, be driving this "Make America Great Again," is it really about making America great again? Because you said something which you probably did not elaborate on, that the targeted culprits, I think those are the words, I'm just trying to find that note. But I mean, the targeted culprits, as it were, it's actually the Americans themselves. And because if they say it's making America great again, and you actually raise the issue relating to funding, that people who actually funded would actually be that PayPal, whatever grouping, the mafia, led by Elon Musk and them, and therefore that they would need to be refunded. Now, the question again is, could it also be that, because some of the commentators have actually referred to as, the techno feudalism that Trump, together with those billionaires around him, that they are trying to establish. Others call it digital capitalism. Now, the last question, could it also be that what Trump is doing is possibly a wake-up call, especially on us as a continent and the African leaders, that we should really try and desist from that dependency from the colonial masters in terms of doing our own things? Because since, for instance, the 50s, it's almost as if we still want to cling on the colonial masters, that we can't do anything ourselves, in spite of us being this continent that is rich in terms of minerals, but poor in terms of the economy. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Thanks, Comrade Dr. Sandile. Comrade Pito.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and greetings to all comrades that are present. Thank you, Ambassador, for your, for this beautiful lecture. Your expertise, sheds a valuable light on the complexities and opportunities in bilateral relations. I just have a question for the Honorable Ambassador here. What role do you see for South Africa in basically promoting African interests and priorities within the G20 framework? Thank you, Comrade.
Okay, thanks, Comrade Pito. Comrade David Squabella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very short because I have already written a very detailed article around the very same issues that we are talking about. Just commenting in passing about the visit of our president to the US. Trump is a host from hell, and I do not understand how can anyone embarrass a visitor or ambush your visitor like that, and unfortunately, some people believe in that propaganda. Even here at home, they know very well that there is no such a thing called white genocide in South Africa. But that is beside the point. It has been dealt with extensively. Let me leave it like that. The issue is that, as far as I'm concerned, South Africa should continue to engage the US for the sake of their fledgling economy. It is in our best interest, to continue nursing the relationship with them. And unfortunately, trade relations is a quick procured arrangement. Currently, there is a serious trade imbalance between the US and South Africa. It was mentioned that only 22 South African companies have invested in the US, as against 600 American companies in South Africa. But we are crying the loudest. With only few companies invested in the US, we are crying the loudest. As if the Americans will not be hurt by this investment if they decide to disinvest from South Africa. 600 companies will be affected. And in the same way, we will be affected. Many jobs will be lost, of course. But my parting shot will be, we should not relent on looking for ways of cushioning the impact of arbitrary imposition of tariffs or excessive tariffs against our country. We should continue to strengthen the relationship with the like-minded, countries, the like-minded, international trading partners, like our allies in BRICS. We should never allow anything to come in between, our relationship with our allies in BRICS. That is all that I would like to say for now. Of course, there is so many things that we can talk about until tomorrow. Like I'm saying, the bulk of what I wanted to say has actually been jotted down, penned down in my article, which was published in ANC Today, regarding the very same issues that we are talking about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Squabella. Perhaps maybe for this round, let me just add one person, Comrade Don Hanso, before we
Chair.
give Comrade Ambassador to respond. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Comrade Welile for such an insightful presentation. The way it's packaged, it gives you a clear understanding of the ability that he has to navigate the international arena. Comrade Welile, I think Tambo should be credited the way he developed you guys to be diplomats wherever you are. I'm not going to be long. I just want to take from your presentation, you raised the institution called HATSI. For me, that is critical. There is nothing in what you have said that I'm against. I agree we should have relations with America. But the point, however, is how do we do it? The Hastings institution, for me, you said it developed Reagan. When you're looking at Trump, as you explained now, he's looking he's inward looking, but vociferous outside. He's vociferous mainly in progressive institution and organization. He is using Reagan's program
of rolling out the frontiers of communism. You can see his fight with China. He's fighting China to push back communism. At the same time, using Nixon's strategy of dividing Russia and China. You can think that is mediating in Ukraine, of dividing those two. But you have seen Vance, how he has gone to Germany and chastised the German government before election for not allowing the right-wingers, meaning the right-wingers are up. You have raised the Silicon Group as a strong group around Trump and Trump emergency, which is the South African right-wingers. My point then is the right-wingers in South Africa and what Trump was showing the delegation in there. Is he not preparing a ground for a regime change in South Africa? If he does, actually, let me not ask that question. Let me say, let's be cautious in domestic front. Any relations that are coming from the Trump, like people are talking about SpaceX and what have you now, we must be careful because in that delegation, there was talk of SpaceX being in the rural police stations. That's in our national interest. Our democratic revolution has to be developed from there. And if you put those things in there, you are killing ourselves. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I just wanted to raise those few.
Okay, thanks, Comrade Don. Comrade Nhlapo, over to you. Perhaps maybe there's a response where we can. I see some of them, there were clarity that was provided, like what Comrade Clayson has clarified on, but I'm handing over to you, Comrade Nhlapo.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. The first comments, I found them quite interesting because they were sounding an optimism about Trump as a person and his commitments to fairness and development. An example was given that there was job creation and American people, particularly Black people, benefited much under him. I'm not sure which term, maybe the first term, apparently first term or second term. I would encourage the comrade to really seriously read at the implications of what has happened. And the rolling back of whatever gains that Black people in the United States, particularly African Americans, have been able to achieve. And some of the policies that have been developed now and actions taken, even in the reduction of staff in the civil sector, reduction of civil servants, and particularly purging within the military, and many other areas on which Trump has pronounced himself on racial issues. I would be very, very careful to see Trump as a progressive in as far as race relations in the United States are concerned. But I will leave it up to him to look at what is happening. If Black lives matter and everything else that has been happening in the US, even at the first time in the administration, the policies that they had put in place now do not serve as testimony to the optimism that will translate into making this continent of shitholes a favorable one of human beings that will be supported through American investments to develop. These are the things that he has said. He's on record to have said these things. He has not changed. So take the man by his word and his actions. I agree with him. And his words and actions point to a direction of concern about his intentions. He's a businessman, he knows what he's doing. But his orientation is one that is very problematic. I wouldn't be excited about him being in office. I think the issues that were raised by Tsepo, amongst other things, are just two issues that I want to bank on. The issue of Andrew Young. Andrew Young is in business now in Atlanta, working with Coca-Cola and other major business interests there. He still does have some interest in South Africa. And he has some interest and relationships with a number of constituents here in South Africa, in particular the KZN. There are some programs that we've been running in support of the Martin Luther King Foundation, with whom he was very closely associated. He's still active, but I wouldn't count on him as a person that we can rely on. He has moved on. And if you want to understand Andrew Young today, the ambassador of the bow tie, the one who had just left, the one who created problems between us and the US, is his product, is his close associate. That's the circles within which he's moving. That one has gone back into business in Atlanta, and I think he's there with Andrew Young. That's why he has said nothing about what is happening in South Africa. He wouldn't. And I'm not sure how long he's been here. So Andrew Young is the Andrew Young of old, and even at that time, there are issues around him that will make some of us not invest any hope in people like him. Because at the moment, he's still pursuing this old Sullivan principles approach towards investments and business here in South Africa. There are a number of things. I've had a number of engagements with him, and we differed fundamentally on a lot of issues, as it was the case then when he was still a United States ambassador to the UN. How to leverage the G20, I think time will tell. The best way of leveraging the G20 is to understand what the G20 represents and what its limitations are in terms of the manner in which it operates. The G20 only started meeting in this current format of a leaders' conference at the time of the crisis, financial crisis in the United States in 2008. That's when George Bush convened a meeting of the G20, an expanded meeting for that matter at the time. And concerns were raised, which I think are still valid even today, by the G77 and China in particular. When we were chairing it, and our ambassador Tumsani Kumalo was the chair, they sent him with a message. Because of the hostility of the United States at the time, which still continues towards the United Nations, they were wary of the issues that were being put on the agenda, which are issues that belongs to the committees of the General Assembly, where the United Nations had no control and had an equal vote like everybody else, had no veto and could not sway things to their advantage. And those are the issues that we're packing in there. And this is the issue that we got worried about. So they felt that the G20 should remain focused on its core founding mandate. That is the restructuring of the financial institutions, global financial institutions. That's where it should focus. That was the reason for the formation of the G20. And that is still a touchy issue, a very important issue that we should not lose sight of. After that first one, 2008, it was followed by one in the United Kingdom. It was also a leaders meeting. Gordon Brown convened it. The next one was back into the States by Obama. It followed the same pattern. It became almost like taking on board the part of the agenda of the G7 or G8 then, and bringing those things outside of the UN to try and get those positions solidified. This has been the problem at the time, and this is what we need to be careful about. And one of the things that the South Africans, I think we need to be careful about is the inclusion of the AU as a member. When we're the sole member of the G20, part of the issue that had arisen was that at some stage people were saying that Africa is represented because we are there. And we had to take a position and clarify the issue that we're there in our own right, not as a representative of the African continent. And that if the African voice has to be articulated within the G20, then they must be given, the AU must be given an observer status. And that the chair of the AU for the year, together with the chair of the commission and the NEPAD, plus the African Development Bank, can then represent the interests of Africa within the G20. Once they allowed or transformed the observer status of the EU to full membership whose implications have not been clearly expressed itself as to what it means to have the EU there, representing Europe, when the European countries were part of the G20. An argument was made that the AU can equally represent Africa. I think that's one aspect that we need to look at and be very careful about it, because I've heard recently and many times people saying that now Africa has got two members in the G20, that is South Africa and the AU. We are a member state of the AU. So we can't be saying that within the G20 we'll promote issues of Africa, and then we have to fine-tune that thing and understand exactly what that relationship is. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves at serious crossroads. That's why certain positions that we're taking are being challenged by Africans and friends, including within BRICS. So whatever the issues that we take there, we need to be very careful, because we are perpetuating a G20 that was diverted from its core function. And this is the issue that Liseja, the governor of the South African Bank, was raising during the summer meeting of the Bretton Woods institutions on the sideline when the G20 was being discussed, that the focus of the G20 from its original mandate has shifted since 2008 and is looking at broader issues and paying less attention to the core issue of the Bretton Woods institutions and other international financial institutions. I thought I should make that point, that we have to understand what is G20, how it came about, what it is, and how we can leverage it. It cannot be a substitute for issues that are supposed to be dealt with within the WTO, issues that have to be taken up and dealt with within the committees of the United Nations General Assembly in New York on the specific issues that they are dealing with. Otherwise, we are going to find ourselves running into a lot of difficult challenges. The red flag that was raised in 2008 might come up again. No, Christine, I agree with you. I think I don't have to go much into what you have said, but that I wouldn't place my head on the block about the future of AGOA. Let's continue to take a position in the interest of those participant countries to say, let's remain a unified bloc. But my worry is that when the tariffs were slashed on everybody, poor Lesotho was hit at the biggest and is a member of SACU. And SACU did not rally around on a trade issue that is something that is a matter for SACU, which has to do with us. It was everyone for himself, God for us all. Zimbabwe was responding in its own way. Every other African countries were responding as individual states that have been impacted upon. And this has been the experience for some time in the meetings that we're addressing the issue of the future of AGOA. I've attended several times those meetings. Africa is not united on that matter because most of the issues that African countries that are partners in AGOA are contributing in is apparent. And when the United States decided to extend the same tariffs to Bangladesh and Vietnam, which Africans tried to oppose and failed, because those ones, they produce in bulk and flood the American market with their goods after the Chinese. So what Africans contribute is just a drop in the ocean. Drop in the ocean. I think we need to be real about it, look at the reality of what is happening and how it is going to be easy to divide Africans. Swaziland was maintained under AGOA, was suspended from AGOA because they were dealing harshly with their journalists. But the relationship between Swaziland and the United States, particularly from a security point of view and other aspects, remain cordial. They are no more part of AGOA since they were suspended. When Museveni passed the law on LGBTQ, Uganda was suspended. Trump has not reversed that suspension on the basis that he has done exactly what he believes in also to be the way in which things should be attended. So the Uganda remains there, suspended. Now, it just shows that they do whatever they want with any country for whatever other reason at the time when they deem fit. They will simply suspend you. because it is their tariffs that they unilaterally decide to lower. So let's look at how they operate so that we can come to an understanding that they will do whatever it takes to preserve American interests and to remain with an advantage in which they can be able to get what they want. They never bring the DRC and Rwanda into AGOA because they've got a deal with them. They're getting what they want. That's how they operate. That's how Trump operates. And these are the deals that we are going to see all over the show. We've seen them with Angola when Bush, Biden went there. The Trump administration is going to take over the Lobito corridor, which is a SADC program. Right now, in the agreements that they've signed with Rwanda and the DRC, there is mention there of development of hydropower. Does not suggest that the Inga Dam project has been going to be hijacked. I'm saying that there are signals and there are signs that we've got to be vigilant about because they are putting America first and their interest first at the expense of everything. There is no question of them doing it to be nice to anybody and trying to sustain good relations. They've had enough of that. They spent money, they've not had all the dividends coming out of it. So I'm saying that we need to be very careful. Well, the Ukraine Russia issue, I think the jury is still out. You see the drama that is playing itself here and the manner in which the Americans decided that if Europe does not come to the party and fund its own security, the United States is no more prepared to do so. It started under Obama after Libya, when they went to NATO, and they were saying there seems to be a differentiated membership within NATO. There are those who provide and those who benefit. They said they are tired of benefiting. They must raise the money that they put into NATO, and they must buy weapons, and they must do all the things that they were saying they must do. It continued that way. Again, it's about America no more prepared to take the responsibility of maintaining a world order that is crumbling. And no more prepared to do that. And if we think that they do things for whatever other reason, I think we're making a mistake. We're not reading very well their intentions and where they are going to. Their acceptance of multipolarity and the manner in which they define it as 3-4 centers of power, being America, China, Russia, and to some extent they're accommodating Pyongyang. That's an elaboration of Trump. Mark Rubio talked about 3 centers, and that is multipolarity. And if you look at their policies towards these 3 countries, then you understand where they are investing all their energies and time. And we have to look at things from that direction and come to understanding. The question of techno-feudalism, very interesting concept, but the reality is that the 4th and 5th industrial revolution is surging on. It's surging on. And if you ignore that reality, and those who are driving it are going to continue to dominate everything. That's why AI and robotics and everything else, they are investing in that because that's what is driving industrial development. So we better take note that this thing is going on, is moving, is unstoppable. Starlink, you can look at it from within that context also, as to what it means and what it means to stop it, or cybercrime and all of those things, including the battles with US, China, Huawei in the mix, and everything that has been happening, even in terms of cybercrime and interference in elections, it's an ongoing thing because of this development. So if you control the techno industry where these things come from, then it means that you have got the upper hand, you control everything else. I've dealt with the question of promoting Africa within the G20. That we need to look very clearly what is the G20 all about. And if we think that we want to promote Africa within the G20, we might as well look at the role of the AU within the G20. And look at our role in the African continent as South Africa. Not leveraging anything else, but our role as an African country within the African continent. What has happened? It has declined. And this is what we should be more concerned about, and not hoping that by hosting through rotation, we'll then have an advantage. It's because of rotation. It had to come to South Africa because we are a member. And as long as we get that in our heads, that it is because of rotation that we are hosting, and there is nothing special about it, but it's a benefit of membership. And what you do about it becomes important. But we have put forward a theme that for some it's very uncomfortable. They can't live with it. And some of the areas that we want to engage are the ones that they are running away from in the climate processes. We are not going to get a deal on climate issues out of the G20, forget it, or all the other things, because at the end of the day, you'll have these discussions. They'll go back to where they belong, and that is in the committees of the United Nations and other multilateral institutions. That's where decisions will be taken, which will be binding and will be implemented to some extent if the resources are made available and there is political will to do so. But to think here, if yes is for advocacy and all of those things, let's get it clear. This is what we want to do, but not to hope that we'll get decisions that you can't get in the WTO or any of the multilateral institutions that deal with the issues related to the thing. I think we need to be very careful, otherwise we'll end up disappointed. I think, Comrade Don, you have said whatever you're saying, the question of regime change, I can understand you, the Hassan Institute, but this is the reality of the United States. That's how the United States political establishment functions. And Washington is defined by the presence of all of those elements. And those are the people, and that's how policy is and policy interests are driven within the United States. And it's money and big money that talks. To drive those interests, it's money that talks. And I must say at the end, all of the initiatives and executive orders that Trump has taken and the actions that he is taking, targeting all of those people who do not agree with it, removing the security clearances and removing their security details and punishing them, even those who were in the Department of Defense who had taken a position in opposition to some of the things he wanted to do, those who are in the judiciary. He's attacking them and they're hitting back. They are hitting back. American people are not just sitting back and being taken. Today, one of the courts have ruled against tariffs as illegal in the manner in which they've been applied. There's a legal battle that is ongoing because what Trump is doing are illegal measures that undermine the role and responsibility of Congress. The midterm elections are coming. If you are going to be doing what he is doing, those people who are hoping, who are up for contesting for re-election, they are running in and out into their constituencies because they've been affected by the decisions that have been taken by Trump and executed by Elon Musk, who has formally resigned today from the administration to go and look after his crumbling business. He has resigned formally. And there's been a very serious problem between him and Trump, even on the question of tariffs and other things, because he's got his major investment and production plant in Guangdong, in China. That's where he produces his electric vehicles of his. So the interests that cannot be sustained. If Elon Musk will go from one department to the other, take their capability to manage those departments by freezing their tools of work, by making it impossible for them to have access to the databases, and removing all the experienced staff. Those who have been appointed have got a problem with Elon Musk because they cannot fulfill their mandate. And therefore, there is a serious challenge and a serious problem that is taking place. There is never been such a large-scale dismissal of people within the National Security Council. Just last week, Friday, a whole lot of them, senior, middle, and juniors, they were dismissed simply because they are suspected not to comply or support the measures that are being taken by Trump. He believes that they don't support him. And he said it very clear that he wants loyalty. If no loyalty, you must go. That's what is happening. So when I said that the primary casualties or the primary victims of the decisions that have been taken by Trump is the American people themselves, we, because of the American and the US domination, were just a collateral damage. And we better get it as it is, because the people in the US are fighting. Those who've got money are in court every day trying to reverse every decision that is taken. And what he did at the White House, and that's where I'm going to end, and that show that he put up there, it was for the domestic audience, because even day before in Congress, Mark Rubio, the Secretary of State, was being questioned by one of the senators as to why the preferential treatment to these 49 Afrikaners, when in terms of the orders that they've given out and actions that they've taken, their policy on immigrants is very clear. And why these ones? He's not been able to give a convincing answer. And he used that platform at the White House to direct himself to the American audience and lied about genocide against the Afrikaners in South Africa to justify this exception that he has made. Mark Rubio was even reminded that during the time of our struggle, such a dispensation was never given to the oppressed people of South Africa when it was clear that they actually would benefit from a refugee status. I'm sorry for taking long, but I thought I should take up these issues and clarify them to the best of my understanding. I hope I'm not wrong. But I'm just speaking from my understanding, from my experience, having lived and worked in that country and following every day what is happening. Not because there was a trip to Washington. There's something that I've always done.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Nhlapo. We really appreciate the clarity-seeking question that has been clarity that has been provided to these questions, and for also the comrades who came through, Comrade Clayson, who also clarified these matters since he's still sitting in that department. We really appreciate as a Ward 5 in this region, Motswane, for having came to engage us on this particular topic. It's important as part of the renewal that our the society itself continue to be educated around this particular matter. We know it's a burning matter. When we try to call you, we know that there's a burning matter, and having been the ambassador in that particular side of the world, you'll be able to assist us in dealing with this particular question. And thank you very much, Leader. We really appreciate that. Now it's 9:22. Perhaps maybe it's important that comrades, we close this session. Close this session, and therefore I hope, comrades, there is nothing that I'm leaving behind. We need to close now so that comrades also have an opportunity to go to work tomorrow. Now, let me check. Comrade Tulani, are you on the platform, Leader? Comrade Tulani Mabasu. Since I can't hear him, thank you very much.
Sorry, Comrade Chair. Sorry,
Yeah.
Comrade Chair. I think he's not on the platform. Maybe Comrade, if you ask Comrade Listen to close with vote of thanks, if Tulani is not on the platform.
He's not. Is he here?
He's check Comrade
No.
Listen too. Yeah.
Comrade Listen, may you please close us with the vote of thanks?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. On behalf of this branch, Ward 5, Ambassador Nhlapo, we want to most sincerely thank you for taking time and making yourself available for this important engagement. I was very tempted earlier on to mention, because I had the name of OR Tambo being mentioned during the discussion, that Ambassador Nhlapo is a proud recipient of a lifetime achievement as a diplomat of the OR Tambo Ubuntu Awards, because of the in recognition of the many years that he dedicated in serving the movement, the government of South Africa post-1994, as well as the people of this country. So as a branch, we want to take this opportunity to thank you for this very insightful presentation that has empowered our comrades because each and every one of us have people that we engage with on a daily basis. So the information you've shared with us will be extremely useful in educating others, clarifying, answering questions, and helping our people to understand what's happening geopolitically and locate South Africa within that context. So thank you so much. And I also just want to recognize Ambassador Mtinzo, who I saw on the platform as well. On behalf of the branch, thank you very much, leadership. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Perhaps, Comrade Nhlapo, just the last word that you may want to say, Comrade Nhlapo, before we close.
No, all I have to say, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for being patient with my long explanations. But I thought that I needed to get into as much detail as possible, so that at least we can have a common framework at looking at these things and a common understanding. And appreciate what Clayson was saying, because we are dealing with a touch and go situation, very, very tricky situation. And I must say that for Team South Africa, with whatever difficulties that we might have been faced with, and having to engage in that situation without a full complement of an embassy, we did very well. And I'm proud to be a South African and having served this government of the people of South Africa in the area of international relations and diplomacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leader. We really appreciate it. Comrades, thank you everyone who has been here, who attended, participated, and also listening. It's very important. Don't take it for granted. We will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, comrades.
Good night.
Good night. Thank
Thank you very much, comrade.
Good night, Welile.